guys, Tarke here, and this is going to be a bit of a weird video. This is going to be like a meta video about Path of Exile discussion with the current Path of Exile climate. I'll explain what that means in a second. So, how did this video come about? After the last Baeclast, which I really enjoyed, and you can check out on the channel, I had a message from a close friend of mine, and someone who's very involved in the Path of Exile scene, and he was a bit worried about, you know, the direction Baeclast has been going in. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, well, I feel like you guys, you know, you're a bit too harsh on Reddit. I was like, okay, fair. I can give you that one. I'll let you have that one. And I feel like you're not critical enough of Path of Exile. And that really surprised me. And every now and again, people would be like, oh, Baeclast, they're too afraid to ever be critical of PoE, which I think is rubbish. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think we're one of the more critical voices out there. And I was like, well, do you mind going into a bit more depth? Like, what do you mean by, like, we're not being critical? Because if you just go back into the last episode, for example, you know, while we were all very optimistic for Heist, we spent quite a lot of time talking about our, you know, potential concerns in the league. And he was like, well, you know, I felt you don't talk about all the problems we've been having this last year. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, the tech issues, you know, a league's missing endgame systems, So we talked it out. And in the end, he was basically like, oh, I get where you're coming from. So there's been lots of things that's been happening over the last, like, year and a half when it comes to PoE. And with Path of Exile 2 ever looming in the horizon, talking about PoE is kind of weird. So what do I mean by that? So if you were to say, oh, but you don't spend enough time talking about, like, trade issues or enough time about the loot, like, why isn't loot being reworked yet? A big point of Path of Exile 2 is meant to be, like, you know, overhauling a lot of these now outdated systems. And whenever we have Chris on, we always talk about this, and he's like, yes, we're very much aware the team wants to be pushing forward, and, you know, we're hoping to get this all rolled out, you know, leading up to PoE2. And I'm like, I was talking to a friend, I'm like, well, when we've had that discussion once, do you want us to have that exact same conversation, like, every episode? Like, do we need to spend every episode saying, hey, you know that thing that we addressed was a problem, like, 3 episodes back? We need to do it again, like, because they haven't fixed it yet, even though they've said when. Like, you know, like, what's the point of us going over the same conversation over and over again, or conversations we have on our own streams or in YouTube videos? You know, how often should we bring this stuff up? And then we started talking about the league stuff. And the league stuff, I think, is very interesting, because I do regularly see the sentiment of people who are like, oh, they haven't enjoyed leagues recently. Like, they feel like the last year of leagues has been kind of rough. And that's something I really sympathize with. So for me, going back, I looked, like, through all the leagues. Going back to the end of 2018, I would say there's probably been 2 leagues during that period that I've really loved long term. Nearly every single league since now, going back to Betrayal, I've enjoyed for, like, a month. But there haven't actually been that many leagues that have kept me, like, entertained throughout. So the last, in my opinion, this is all just my opinion, right? Really good, like, 10 out of 10 league was Betrayal. I loved Betrayal. I always thought Betrayal was really fun. And I know that a lot of people didn't like the whole oppressive nature and the interventions, and they had tech issues. The tech issues thing, if you had tech issues during League, then sure. But I really liked that oppressive nature. And this also made me realize I generally like oppressive leagues. Any league where it's kind of like you're just being randomly ganked by a bunch of mobs, I really like those leagues. So I tend to feel very favorable for those. Like, if I look back, my fondest memories of leagues is stuff like Invasion, stuff like Beyond. I like that sense of, you know, this map could get me. I do really like that. But Betrayal, I think, was a really good league. It had sort of a little bit of something for everyone. It introduced the new crafting system with the whole unveils. Now unveils have their problems, but, like, back then it was a huge improvement. The Kata fight, while it was a messy fight, it was kind of fun, but that was the really messy fight when it first came out. But Betrayal, like, that hooked me, and that, you know, I was checked in to Betrayal, like, the whole 3 months. I'm like, let's go. So off the back of Betrayal, we had Synthesis. Synthesis now is looked upon quite fondly, but Synthesis had a very rocky start. The Memory Nexus was pretty hit or miss. The whole crafting system was powerful but very obtuse. Synthesis was a real learning league, I think, for GGG. But Synthesis, I think, while people are very fond of it now and wish that it would come back in some form, like the bosses in it were really good. I'm really glad Cortex is in back now. And synthesized items are very interesting when it comes to making builds, and we've seen a bit of synthesized items coming back in from Harvest. You know, I think the general large population are probably happy that synthesis isn't in there, while I know that some people really wish it was. But anyway, it was kind of like, it was an ambitious league, but, you know, not quite fully fleshed out. It was a bit messy. It was ambitious, but messy. Legion. So Legion was very, very popular. Legion was a very popular league. Legion, in my mind, while fun for like a month, it didn't have any depth to it. I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but Legion was some of the most fun I've had in a league start. But that fun didn't last particularly long. It reminds me a lot of Incursion. I had similar feelings to Incursion. I really enjoyed Incursion's start, but it just didn't grip me because it's like a very static system. Legion also had the whole issue where like it very much forced a certain kind of build. So you were just playing very fast, full screen clear builds. And even if you were playing fast builds, but they just didn't clear massive screens, they felt really bad. And then Legion also had the whole issue with, you know, the initial implementation of 5 ways and headhunter groups and how that kind of like dictated the market price. A lot of people just weren't even interacting with the monolith system. But Legion was a fun league. It was very fond. A lot of people have in their like top 5 leagues of all time. But, you know, didn't have all that much going on once you started peeling back the layers. So from Legion went into Blight. Blight, I think if Blight had the chance to get all the development it deserved, I think Blight might have been an all-time favorite for me. I really liked the Blight gameplay. Blighted maps were really fun. Just didn't have enough access to the bloody things. I'm always really excited when I see a Blighted map drop these days. I think Blight was a very good addition to the game. I like Blight a lot. But Blight was suffering from a very low drop rate of maps and was incredibly underdeveloped. It was missing an entire endgame system. Like, we were meant to be tracking down the source of the Blight due to ExileCon. Really unfortunate timing on that. So from Blight, we went into Metamorph. Metamorph, again, really fun. I liked it a lot. I liked how building your own boss. I liked how scary it was. Had a little bit of that oppressive nature in the fact that every single zone you were in would have this potentially very scary thing at the end of it, depending on how you like built your boss. But underdeveloped, was missing its whole endgame system, being the first league after ExileCon, scheduling. Again, the schedule just didn't quite hit with Metamorph, sadly. Really, really adored that league. Wish we'd seen more of it, and also Tane's Lab shouldn't be in the game right now. Metamorph, yay. Metamorph and maps, yay. Tane's Lab, cut that crap. Nah, we don't need that. Delirium, good. I liked Delirium a lot. It had that oppressive feel, which I really, really adored. I liked Delirium. I actually liked Delirium less the more it went on. I liked Delirium a lot at the start. Yes, it had the whole visual clutter thing, but it was like, as it kind of got like tweaked and tuned, and as they like just crazy buff the rewards to just a silly degree by the end of it, let's be completely honest. I kind of became less fond of Delirium. I feel like they had pretty good balancing at the start, but anyway, that's a separate issue. But Delirium was pretty good, other than the visual clarity problems, which they eventually fixed. Delirium, pretty solid. And now people kind of complain they don't get enough access to Delirium, so I think the community's kind of warmed up to Delirium quite a lot. Although it was very unpopular at the start, I will admit. Harvest, obviously, is the most recent one. Harvest, very underdeveloped. If whether you like the crafting system or not, the actual like harvest mechanic just didn't get enough care. Obviously, they got screwed over by lockdown, and because of that, it's kind of understandable what was going on there. So why did I just do that little like breakdown running through all the previous leagues? So it was going back to this conversation I had with my friend yesterday. He's like, I feel like you guys, you don't hold GG up to like a chord enough. You're not like, oh. And I was like, well, what do you really want us to say? You know, if you go back through all the previous leagues, you know, everything up from now to Blight, each league has had a very like fair reason that it didn't quite hit. They're on this very strict league schedule. Yes, it's a schedule they've set themselves. You could make the argument they'll cut back on the leagues, but they won't. But anyway, accepting the fact they make X many leagues a year, you know, should we have to spend every single episode having to reiterating why, yeah, it sucks that it's not more developed, but it is what it is. You know, it's like, how often do we need to repeat these conversations? And then whenever it comes to like a big system we'd like to see, you know, rehauled, like loot or crafting or whatever, there's that whole PoE2 problem where everyone's like, oh, well, there's a really big issue. You're like, yeah, well, they're going to try and fix that in PoE2. Do we have to spend every single episode saying, hey, this is that issue we mentioned last episode again, but hopefully PoE2 fixes it? That was actually something that I made a point of asking Chris about, because the whole like the blessing / curse of PoE2, it really does make talk about PoE weird, because nearly any valid complaint you could ever possibly have about Path of Exile, you can just wave it away by just saying PoE2. So last time we had Chris on, I had a point of asking, like, hey Chris, how do you feel about the fact that whenever there's any critical discussion about Path of Exile, PoE2 is just, you know, beckoned as this nirvana of gaming that will solve any and all woes? Like, what's your take on that? Should people have more realistic expectations? And Chris straight up says, well, you know, if we do our job right, it will fix all of these problems. We're trying to fix everything. And, you know, it'll come out when it comes out, so a way off, but when it does, we're going to, you know, hit all these points. Now, having played PoE2, obviously, you know, only the first half of Act 1, it does feel really good. It does feel really, really good. Anyone who got the chance to play PoE2 in New Zealand will like attest at how good it just felt. It is weird, because when you just look at it, it's like, oh, it's just like a visual facelift. Just the way the characters move smoother, like the animations, everything just feels like it truly feels AAA, but not in like a gym selling AAA. Like, it actually feels, it feels crisp. Every little movement, the way your characters turn, different animations based on like the speed of your character. There's just so many little things like that which really just makes it just feel right. And all the bosses and all the zones that we got to explore in Act 1, like, they're spooky. And it's like, if you like that feeling of like, oh my god, this is really scary, like this guy's going to beat the crap out of me, then you will adore it. I do worry a little bit we might have an issue where there's a slight disconnect between the player base of the people who are just like, I just want to turn my head off and kill monsters, lol. And then the PoE2 campaign is just going to absolutely destroy them. And then what do? Do they tune it down for that? I remember in New Zealand, they did say that they purposely tuned the demo we got to play to be harder, because they wanted it to be like really hard for the people who were demoing it on the floor. And they really liked it was that difficult. And I kind of want them to keep that difficulty. It kind of sucks that we've got this slightly awkward thing where it's like they want to make it really hard, and there are some people who want it to be really hard, but we'll probably have to tune it down. I do sometimes wonder if it'd be possible to have some form of difficulty modes in PoE. This is a separate topic. It's hard because it's an online game with an economy. Maybe if it was an SSF option, like, it's just like purely just, hey dude, if you want to play SSF, you could just make it harder, and not just a case of, well dude, just make a private league and add 20% more health, because that kind of difficulty is arbitrary. It's more about like tweaking enemy behavior. I'll go back to talking about like The Last of Us. I've used this example before. The Last of Us 2, whether you like the game or not, it has some of the best accessibility options, and the main things which makes that game feel cool from a difficulty scaling point of view is you can tweak the amount of resources that drop, you can tweak the aggressiveness of the enemies, you can tweak the health of the enemies. So you could have like super aggressive enemies, but then be like, okay, well, they're really aggressive, which makes the game harder, but then I'll make them a bit squishier, and I'll make my character a bit squishier. And like, I kind of wish we could do that level of tweaking, but obviously that would only work in an SSF environment, because otherwise the game just wouldn't function. I do sometimes wonder if maybe that's a direction PoE could possibly go into, since we always have, whenever we have a big discussion, and it's always like, oh, the 1% want this, or oh, the casuals want this. You know, it does kind of feel like we've got a bit of a budding head sitch. I kind of wish that there were more, just like more play options. I don't know, but anyway, I've kind of got distracted. The point of this video, and the point that I was hopefully trying to address, and I wanted your feedback on, PoE2 and just how weird the world is at the moment with global pandemics and all this rubbish, it just makes talking about video games in like a critical manner hard. Because it's all pretty fair enough. I don't know. Should we spend more time on our episodes going over these past issues? Do you feel like we do too much already? And also, you know, the internet isn't just one person. You always get conflicting. Like, we had a big thing on the last episode that we were too negative. So, yeah, you can never please everyone. But yes, anyway. PoE2. Let's talk about PoE difficult. PoE2 feels really good to play. What do you think of the state of PoE discussion, by the way? Bye-bye.